Y'all, today I'm so thrilled to welcome my friend Lindsey Hartz to the show. Lindsey is a marketing consultant and book launch strategist at the Hartz Agency, a boutique marketing firm for authors dedicated to creating strategic marketing campaigns that help words transform lives. Lindsey and I met online several years ago when I joined a book launch team she was managing, and we've stayed in touch to share our love for serving authors and, of course, reading all their books. We talk about how to tackle the overwhelm and fear of book marketing, when you should start outlining your book marketing plan, and how to build a community-driven launch team long before you launch your book. Plus, you'll hear Lindsey share about her new group program for authors called Ignite Your Book Marketing, and I'm so honored to be one of the coaches in her first round kicking off in March. All kinds of good stuff coming your way today. We don't call this book marketing mania for nothing, so let's get to it. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Book Marketing Mania podcast. I'm your host, Kim Stewart, and I'm so glad you're tuning in today. Hey, Lindsey. Welcome to the Book Marketing Mania podcast.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
So everybody heard me talk about you in your introduction, but I would love for you to share a fun fact about yourself.
Oh, a fun fact. I always get asked how I read so many books. You can't see this, but behind me, I have a gigantic bookshelf filled with client books and personal favorites. And my secret is that I can actually speed read. I taught myself how to do this at a very young age because I love books. Imagine that.
And do you remember everything? Because I think I'm a speed reader, but I remember nothing.
I think it's part of what makes me a great marketer. I tend to remember themes from books before I remember every detail. So I think just the way my brain operates is picking out like key statements or takeaways from the book. And that's what I carry with me long term. So I can pretty much tell you some key themes or lessons I learned from just about every book I've read, fiction or nonfiction.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, so we're going to talk all about book marketing and book launches, Lindsey. I would just love for you to share with our listeners, everybody gets so worked up about the word marketing, and especially when it comes to sharing our books out in the world. Can you just share maybe some mindset tips for our listeners that really struggle with, they've put everything into this great book that they were called to write, and then they just want to just let it go, right? Whoever needs to read it will read it because they just don't want to have to approach that word marketing because they just feel like it's so much about marketing themselves. So I'd love to hear you speak into that from your experience of what you've seen with authors you've been working with and just what you know from the field.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I will say is that marketing is not a dirty word, contrary to what most authors feel when they hear that word. And I think too, a lot of the work with my authors, I see common themes come up. So if you're looking at marketing from the perspective of either one of these mindset thoughts, then I'm going to encourage you, in this conversation to try to shift that perspective a little bit. So what I most often see is that there's overwhelm at the marketing decisions and activities that you as an author need to make, because we can all agree it is overwhelming. And even someone like me who's done this for 10 plus years and has to make these decisions all the time, sometimes the sheer amount of activities available online and off can feel very overwhelming. The second thing is fear. A lot of my authors will ask me questions like, I spent all this time writing this book, and is anybody going to care? Is anybody going to read the message? Are they even going to see it in the noise that is on the online space? And so when you're really debating marketing versus marketing you, right? Like, authors are overwhelmed at what they need to decide, and they're fearful. And so for me, the best way to combat and refocus is to focus on why you wrote your book and how you want to help people, instead of becoming fearful or overwhelmed by how you're going to market. That doesn't mean that you don't need to make marketing decisions, but if you start every decision-making process with why did I write this book? Who do I want to serve? And how am I equipped to help them? It takes a little bit of that fear and overwhelm away and refocuses you towards, I get to do this to help my readers. I'm equipped to do this for my readers. And all I need to do is make a few simple decisions each day in order to do so.
Those are great words of advice. I know that on the very first episode, I just talked about, marketing is simply letting people know we can help them. And I love how you kind of factor that in as just, yeah, that's all we're doing, right? We don't need to get so worked up about every little thing that we need to do, but we just need to go back to our why we even wrote these words to begin with. So I know you have worked with many, many authors over the years, both self-published and traditionally published. Will you just kind of share what you've seen the difference in marketing comes with both of those? Because I know sometimes new authors think if I sign a traditionally published book deal, then my publisher will do all the marketing. So I won't have to do anything. So I would just love for you to speak into your experience in working with both self-published and traditionally published authors when it comes to book marketing.
Absolutely. And to be honest, there's definitely some myths around traditionally published books and self-published books. So hopefully we can kind of smash those myths and refocus and reframe just some of those common beliefs that are not actually 100% accurate. To be honest, in my opinion, marketing a book, whether it's traditionally published or self-published, is no difference at all. Right? So you need to take that part out of the equation and instead focus on marketing itself has foundational steps and principles. And really those foundational steps and principles are growing an audience of potential readers for the book message. Once they're in your audience, serving them well, integrating offers and asks into your emails and social media. And that doesn't mean you have to sell something right away, but you definitely need to be asking questions of your readers, asking for feedback, directing them towards different offerings and blog posts and articles that you have, basically encouraging them to interact with you, not just consume your information. And ultimately, what you're doing is you're going to help them become passionate purchasers and advocates of your work in the future. So in my mind, the process is exactly the same. Here's what's different and what you have to weigh when you're deciding traditional publishing or self-publishing. First, a traditional publisher, their job is really what we call distribution marketing. So they're going to look for and acquire great authors and manuscripts. They're going to take that book through the developmental editing process to make sure the book is as good as it can be, but also a marketable book. There can be great manuscripts and stories that aren't giving a reader a direction to aim towards. They're not giving a reader the next right step. They're not giving a reader some way to transform in their life, their faith, their business, their communication, whatever the book's about. And that's what editing does for you. The formatting, the book cover, there's a whole process that goes into those decisions in terms of attracting a potential buyer's attention, getting the book into book catalogs, which in turn presents the books to buyers to purchase the book and sell online or off. That is what distribution marketing is. Right. And so if you don't have a traditional publisher, then you will not have the benefit of those things. And a lot of those steps you'll have to do on your own or find, freelancers or contractors to do outside of the realm of a publisher. The other thing really has to do with audience. Your job as an author, no matter whether the book is traditional or self-published, is to attract readers and sell your book to them. That's your job. And so if you have a traditional publisher, they might help you in that endeavor. But usually what that help looks like is notifying their audience through their social channels or their email lists about the book. But it is not their job to attract readers to you, get them on your email list, get them to engage with you on social media. That's actually your job completely, whether you're traditionally or self-published. So all to say, there are pros and cons to each. And I think too, the other thing to consider with self-publishing before we wrap this part up is that self-publishing can give you more freedom with what you want to do with your book message. So some traditional publishers are open to creating courses or resources or programs or retreats. Some are not. So with self-publishing, you have free reign to do whatever you want with your book material, which can often result in income outside of book sales, which I think is something that a lot of authors are afraid to tackle, and which is also something that I'm passionate about helping authors see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so great. I just interviewed Becky Kapitsky, and she is from Ministry to Business. And she was just talking about that. Y'all are just two peas in a pod, which is so great. Because
I'm glad she is, because she's a former client. So,
oh, she is. That's right. You probably helped her launch her book, right?
Yep.
She's awesome. Okay. So let's talk about book launch plans, because I know sometimes those can look a little bit different too between traditional and self-publishing. But what I really wanted to ask you about, Lindsey, I know you work with a lot of authors over a long period of time, like 6 to 9 to 12 months. And I think a lot of authors don't realize that, right? They just think my book gets, published and it gets marketed, somehow around that magical time frame. Can you talk about the importance of, I know that some of that time is going to straddle your book launch date, but can you talk about maybe on the before the book even gets in your hands, like the importance of really thinking through your marketing plan and starting to work on that ahead of time?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this in a way that's probably going to make most readers or listeners go, "Oh no," but there's a solution. So really, honestly, as soon as you want to write a book, the marketing and launch process, or at least the steps you need to take, need to be outlined. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that you need to know every single detail. It's actually more in reference to project management. Mm-hmm. So understanding how long it will take you to write the book. Hopefully there's a little bit of a plan there. Some aspiring authors have lots of time, and some authors have to fit writing around life, and that's mm-hmm. great. But the marketing and launch process is a significant piece of releasing a book that I often see most authors wait too late to start, mm-hmm. right? So what I usually tell authors, whether they're traditionally published or self-published, is to make sure that you have written a full book proposal. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're traditionally published, that's not going to be a problem. That's probably how you got a book contract, right? Mm-hmm. Self-publishing, the reason I bring this up is because it's actually prep work for your marketing campaign, although mm-hmm. most authors don't realize that. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. walking through a book proposal and outlining, how to describe your book in one sentence, and creating a summary, and creating short summaries of each chapter and the chapter titles. And there's literally a marketing section on a book mm-hmm. proposal, which I prefer authors to include things like, this is what I am doing to grow mm-hmm. my audience now, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really going to spur inspiration and give guideline to the author, just as they're brainstorming how to market and launch their book, mm-hmm. different ideas. Now, not all of those things may happen, but it's making you sit back and think, how do I need to prepare for this launch? Mm-hmm. What type of ideas do I have? Who do I know that can support me in the launch by sharing about my book? And also, who do I maybe not know yet that would be a great fit that I can build a relationship with in the year or two before my book comes out? Mm-hmm. So basically, marketing starts as soon as you know you need to write a book. Mm-hmm. And it really helps keep you on track. Remember, we just talked about overwhelm. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a timeline and you have just an idea of what you want to do, it actually makes the process of content creation for your launch less daunting down the road. Mm-hmm. And finally, it flat out gives you time to grow your email list, build your audience. There's many different ways we do that, lead magnets, courses, topic-specific interviews like I'm doing with you today, mm-hmm. summits based on your book message, et cetera. There's so many things you can do as you're writing to attract people that would potentially be interested in buying your book, that by the time you get around to actually selling the book, you already have that passionate audience that we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you talked about the book proposal. I know that you've had a lot of conversations and different things you've done with Chad Allen. So I know we're both big Chad Allen proponents. And I always, like, when I first entered this online marketing world for authors, I just remember years ago hearing him talk about no matter which route you're going to go, and especially if you're self-publishing, to have a book proposal. And you don't mm-hmm. typically think about that with a self-published book, but just, for that exact reason, to kind of map out in your mind what you're going to do, and especially to know what you're going to do to market the book. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. And then as you talked about way before when you're first writing the book is, you're building that platform? Because the next question I wanted to ask you about was just when it comes to book launch teams, people often ask, what do I do to gather a book launch team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to actually speak on this from years of experience, seeing launch teams shift and change over the years. Typically what we see is we see an author or a publisher or both send out an application and say, hey, I have this book launch coming up. I'd love people to support the team. And there's usually a list of requirements of what you want the team to do. And it's almost involving social media posts or engaging with the author's posts on social media to bring up traffic to their social media platforms and leaving reviews, right? That's typically what a launch team is. The downside is that we are seeing decreasing results in launch teams, and it's been happening pretty significantly over the last 2 years, especially this past year. Now, I and a lot of my peers have my theories on this. First and foremost, I think everybody is exhausted on the online space. Culturally, politically, a lot has been going on in the world, which means a lot more people are checking out of social media to kind of protect their sanity and protect their emotions and have boundaries around a lot of divisive topics. While that's well and good and healthy, that also means that a lot of that kind of content is dominating online space. So, when a smaller author or a newer author that's still in the growing stage of audience building is trying to get their launch team application or their content noticed, it's very difficult to do right now. So first, I want to tell anybody listening, you're not crazy. That's exactly what's happening. And it's not just you. I've run 3 launches recently. And we had this happen with one huge book that sold 10,000 plus books. We also had it happen with smaller authors that were new or growing in the self-publishing world. So it's happening across the board. It's getting more and more difficult to get people to engage and share. I think that's not meant to be a negative statement. I think it needs to shift, just like you constantly have to shift and pay attention to marketing trends on social media. 2 things that we are recommending and that we're actually building out training in for a new program that I have coming out next year is what we call community-driven launch teams and author circles. So, for example, a lot of launch teams have an application. Those 30 to 500 people wind up in a Facebook group. You give them launch activities for, 6 weeks to 8 weeks, and then you're done. So what we're proposing instead, and what we've been testing with great results is, remember I said way back, you have to start your marketing and serving your audience really early. Well, we're building out communities to serve those people. So Facebook group, you can also use community platforms if you don't like Facebook groups, like Mighty Network or Circle. Those are 2 that we've used with some success. And really all we're doing is building an access point for readers to the author. And a lot of the content that would have typically gone on public social media is going into those groups instead. So those people have a little bit of exclusive access to the author for training, for one-on-one conversations, for interviews, for life updates. They get to be pulled into the book creation process. We often have authors ask questions about their manuscript and ideas and what their audience thinks while they're writing the book. And if you think about this, that could be 6 months to 2 years of building and engaging in this community. Now, you still have to post publicly on social media, but instead of social media being the forefront of all of your highly invested content, I recommend using social media to attract people's attention, right? This is me. This is what I love to do. This is how I can serve you. And then funnel them to your private communities and email list, and then give them extra resources and access to you there. And by the time your book release comes out, you already have your launch team because you've already served them. You've already connected with them. You've already gotten them results, and you've loved on them well enough that they trust you.
Mm-hmm.
So really all you're doing is, instead of building a community every time you have a book, you now
Right.
have one community that you're funneling everybody to, and you're just engaging with them in a relational way.
Yeah.
The other way that we add people to the group, I mean, and there's so many different ways to do this,
Mm-hmm.
but we've also been testing what we call small product offers.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of always giving a free lead magnet,
Mm-hmm.
we might instead create a very short, specific, action-oriented course that teaches your audience one thing they need to know based around your book message. They're often low in cost. We'll say $17 to $37.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that we help you build. We help you get it sold through organic and paid advertising. Organic
Mm-hmm.
meaning free traffic, like people who sign up for my email list from this interview,
Mm-hmm.
or paid, which is ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people also get funneled into this group. So you can have people coming from interviews you do. You can have people coming from purchasing this small product or offer. You can have people coming from speaking events you're doing. The point is to collect them in one place that you own. And then when you get, again, to that launch process, all you're doing is weaving in your launch team asks,
Mm-hmm.
hey, my book trailer's out. Can you go share it? Hey, I posted a series of interviews about the book. Would you mind commenting on them so people can know what you think? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It becomes an organic part of your marketing efforts,
Mm-hmm.
not a one-time thing you do for a couple of weeks every time a book release happens.
Yeah. And it's just that quick and dirty, like really fast timeline, right? And then it's done. And then you never hear from the author again. Until they have the next book come out. So I love that. You're basically talking about it's an author community that they're building on typically a Facebook group, or like you say, there may be other places, but I know we all typically think of like a Facebook group, and it's just ongoing, right? It's just ongoing community and ongoing support of the author's message, or, anything else that they might decide to do that around. That's so funny. I've been through so many, right, that just have this short time period and you're just so exhausted and you're like, I don't want to do another one of these, but yet you still love that author and want to support them. And so that's a great way to do that. But I know that a client of mine had one time wanted to open a Facebook group a couple of years ago. And I was, she was in between book launches, and I was asking her, what was your purpose? What do you want to do with this Facebook group? And she was like, I don't know, I just want to get people together and, have fun or whatever. And it was like not too long ago, she was like, okay, well, my Facebook group's dead. Like I never did anything with it. You're right. I didn't have a goal. I had no plan in mind. And then you're gearing up for another book launch, and it would have been great to have been doing all that. So on that note of just how launch teams have changed so much, and how, just the social media itself has changed. I know way back when we did just have like all the graphics to share, and that worked out perfectly, but now it's so much harder with video and different things like that your launch team might not be able to do for you. So do you have any creative tips for authors if they're forming their own launch team to encourage the members to share on social, as well as give a review when it comes time for the Amazon reviews?
Yeah. So I think with social media, we'll start with that. I would just say more of what I just said above. I think the purpose of a launch team is really four things.
Mm-hmm.
First, it's encouragement for the author. Most of the time, authors have not had a lot of feedback on their work from someone outside of their publishing team or their close friends or family. And so what I love about launch teams is, especially if you engage them correctly and serve them well, they let you know how much they love the book.
Mm-hmm.
They also let you know if there's any gaps in understanding or a point you might have missed. And that's not a negative, because that leads to my second point, which is market research, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you and I both know and often hang out in a lot of author groups where we see a lot of questions and concerns and fears.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's all market research of trying to figure out, this is what these authors are struggling with, and this is how I can serve them better.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing applies to an author with a launch team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be able to have those conversations. And in that natural conversation, you're going to be able to provide them with something you might have missed, or dive deeper to help them out more, right? Just by paying attention to your launch team Facebook group. And one of the things I give my authors at the end of a launch is a list of ideas directly from the launch team group, questions and comments about the book as they're reading, of how they can turn that into future content to keep marketing the book at least a year after. So just keep that in mind. The third thing is I have shifted away from providing a lot of pre-made graphics to launch teams. Instead, I now direct them to the authors' posts on their own social media profiles and direct them to engage with those posts. Because what we need to do is adjust to the social media platform changes. And basically what that's doing is that's kicking in the algorithms. It's sending a large number of people to a post at a specific time, letting them comment, like, share, engage with it. And then that triggers the algorithm of Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram, to show that post to more people who might be interested in it. Now, it's not that I don't have launch teams post random images themselves, but if we do it now, we do it in the context of a giveaway or a hashtag promotion strategy, meaning we will provide them images, encourage them to create their own, encourage them to share, one tip they've learned today from the book and how they're going to integrate it in their life with a book hashtag and image. And then we'll select a launch team giveaway from that. So it's creating more of a marketing movement versus people just sharing social media images on their individual platforms. The reason for that is because launch team members get a little bit exhausted, rightfully so, with a lot of asks, but also the people they're sharing with may or may not care at all about the book. We have we don't know their audience demographics. It's typically friends and family. And consumers are savvy. They know when they're being sold to, right?
Yes,
and
so
right. So in my launch teams, we steer away from here's images, go share it. We direct to increase social engagement on traffic for the author. And then we also really encourage the launch team. And you've seen me do this. I have chapter discussions about the book where I ask them questions. And then I turn around and ask them to share that outward if they're comfortable on their public social profiles, so they can show their friends and family what they're loving about the book they're reading, not just regurgitate branded scripted copy, which isn't necessarily going to sell to anybody, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's where it really plays into part of you working so closely with the author for a longer period of time than just that launch book season. Because I know, sometimes when you do have just the static post of, hey, go share this meme on social, if an author hasn't been active on that social platform, then it really falls flat, right? Because they see a great, beautiful graphic from a random person and then they tag over to the author platform. And then it's like, I don't see anything about the book here.
And there's nothing there.
Yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever. So that's great. What about reviews? Do you have any suggestions for encouraging your launch team to, or even any readers? It doesn't even have to be your launch team, really. It could be any readers to leave those coveted Amazon reviews.
Yeah, there's a whole process we follow because there's a lot of rules and regulations around that. Right. The first thing is that we focus on Amazon and Goodreads because of their audience and their traffic. Hard stop. It's just like why we use Facebook. They pour millions of dollars into market and research that we don't have to do. So even though we might get annoyed at Instagram changes or Facebook changes, we need to try to get on board with what we can and what we're comfortable with because they've already done the research to know this is going to resonate with audiences, right? So with reviews, Amazon and Goodreads has a huge audience base. It is a good return on your time and investment to ask people to leave reviews in both of those places, because they've done the hard work for you of collecting their own audience of avid readers. The second thing is Amazon in particular is getting pretty stringent with rules. We've recently had over the summer a lot of error messages popping up, specifically on reviews left by launch team members that says something along the lines of, this is suspicious review activity. We are only allowing reviews for verified purchases. Now, this is probably, I'm going to assume this, a strategy from Amazon to increase sales to Amazon because it's their platform. Not a surprise, but also because typically a launch team will flood Amazon with reviews the week of release. So having said that, there's two ways to combat this. Number one, we can't change the policy because we don't own Amazon. So instead of investing a lot of time and energy in becoming frustrated with the fact that this is now a thing, we just need to work with it. So for me, I would suggest having your launch team pre-order a book in order to be able to get that verified purchase review. You will have some people tell you they can't afford the book, which is reasonable considering sometimes hardback books are expensive. Paperback can be as well. So one thing that you can do is see as if your publisher will offer a limited Kindle pricing promotion. So sometimes they can lower the price on the Kindle for 48 hours to a couple of days, and then have your launch team purchase that at a lower price point so that when they do leave a review, it shows up as verified. The other thing is we build in a system for our authors to continue to ask for reviews after a launch team is technically over. So we usually set up a review page, and then there's a couple of different ways we utilize this. One of our promotional emails that goes out after the book release is to highlight what actual readers have been saying. It's great to have an email with endorsers, but those are usually high profile figures. And so we also want to show what actual readers, real people in real life, are sharing and saying about the book. And in that email, we have a link to this review page asking people to please leave a review. Another thing is it creates an easy link so that whenever an author is doing a podcast interview or speaking or engaging with the comments in their social media, for example, I often train my authors to mention that. Say, if you've read my book or if you buy my book today, please go leave a review, right? Yeah, and so here's the link. And it puts all the information in one place, and it's not an overwhelming sales page. It's literally just the information on how they need to leave a review, where they need to go, and what a typical review that is helpful looks like, right? So those are some of the things that we do. In terms of incentivizing a launch team, you have to be very careful here. And I have seen this done inaccurately more times than I care to admit. Terms of service on Amazon, which Amazon is connected to Goodreads, is that reviews cannot be solicited or cultivated using financial means. So what that means is you're not supposed to offer gift cards, anything of monetary value, anything like that in exchange for a review. That makes it kind of hard sometimes, right? So what we have been doing instead is trying to give special access to the author. Meaning like a Zoom Q&A about the book for everybody who leaves a review and provides proof of that review. We're not just taking the word for it. Right. Or a 15-minute conversation with the author. The very first thing almost all of my authors say is, that's going to take a lot of time. And I'm like, yes, it is. Because building relationships takes time.
It does. Yes.
Right. And so, yes, you might have to talk to however many people, right? Or you might have to do a Zoom Q&A once a month for 30 minutes for everybody who's left a review and provided you proof of that review. But instead of looking at it as something that's going to take a bunch of time out of your day in a way that's a negative, look at it as an opportunity to talk directly to your readers. And once again, serve them, build trust with them, and hear their questions and concerns so you can continue to create content. Again, this is something that we're building into my program in January of, look, like at the end of the day, if you don't talk to your readers, you're kind of guessing at what kind of content to create and what kind of social media to put out there and what kind of courses and workshops and future books look like. I feel like every author, has inspiration, guide, muse. If you're a person of faith like I am, you might feel like God's called you to write a certain type of book or material. That's accurate, but you have to take those ideas and turn it into marketable material. And you can't do that without your readers, right? So all of this is just information that you can collect to help make those decisions easier in the long run. And really paying attention to what your readers need and what they're asking for, and then actually doing it is going to do way more for you in terms of launching and selling books than anything else that you could do from a marketing perspective. Yeah,
because that's so important, right? The relationship between the author and the reader feels so seen and so valued, right? To be a part of the book launch team, one, but then, to have that one-on-one, I think that'd be amazing if an author offered a little 15-minute chat, and then, what a huge benefit the author would get in return. So this has been amazing, Lindsey. So will you tell everybody how they can connect with you afterwards, either on social or on your website? Because I know they would love to learn about the program you're going to be launching soon, and just any services you have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you head over to igniteyourbbookmarketing.com, which Kim will provide you that link, you can see the preliminary information on the program. It's literally my brain. This is what I'm putting into this program, how I read a manuscript, pull out marketing material, how I create audiences and the type of content that we want to put out there to draw them, to the book in the first place, how we build email lists and social media engagement with all the strategies that we've talked about, how to launch these books without losing your mind. Seriously.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Up-to-date strategy on what's working. I just shared with you, review process, launch team process, and even just connecting with your readers that's not really taught. So all that's going to come out in January. You can head to that page. You can get that information.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the link in the show notes for those. Well, great. Well, Lindsey, this has been amazing, and I sure appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy to serve your listeners.
I hope this interview with Lindsey inspired you as you start creating your book marketing plans. And stay tuned. We'll be continuing this conversation with my guest, Amy Odland, who manages book launch teams for both self-published and traditionally published authors. And her interview is coming up in March, and I can't wait for you to hear it. I always treasure your feedback. Let me know what you thought of today's show by leaving a review or sending me a DM on Instagram at KimStewInspired. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you back here in 2 weeks to cheer you on to market your book one podcast at a time.